Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Cynthia Abazie, a class 2020 Rotary Peace Fellow who finished from Uppsala University in Sweden. In considering the background to why I chose this topic, I was doing my AFE in Ghana, and I came across a number of peace processes that were ongoing. But one predominant thing was that a number of these were male-dominated. For instance, this is the National Peace Council in Ghana, in Tamale, the northern region, and there were only 3 women with over 28% men. So this was a challenge for me in terms of how to navigate this problem and then address these gender disparity gaps. But then how can women ensure that they are integrated in peace negotiation processes? That was the reason why my study chose to look at 3 countries. Number one, in Colombia, where there was a success story of how women were able to gain access. Number 2, in Mozambique, they were not able to gain access. In Liberia, they were able to gain access. So the question I had was, why were there different outcomes in the 3 countries? And I found out that it was more about the nature of how women mobilized, and which I choose to call women's civil resistance. So in conclusion, part of my recommendations has always been that there's a need to make peace negotiations and structures more inclusive. So we need, in as much as, yes, a number of studies have mentioned the importance of women in peace structures, there is also a need for this to be practicalized and ensure that it translates effectively in what is happening in the contextual dynamics of certain countries, especially post-conflict societies, that do not see this as very important in peace processes. So we need to open up peace processes and ensure that we make peace negotiations and structures more inclusive. Women's agency in peace building is very critical, as opposed to viewing women as victims in armed conflict. The way women are conceived also goes a long way to painting the picture of the acceptability, of the agenda or not. And more emphasis should be on women's agency in peace building and their roles as critical peace actors within certain conflict contexts. There is also the need for using nonviolent means. A lot of the switch in this day and age has been tilting towards violence, and as much as possible, this doesn't lead to good outcomes within countries and societies. But there's also nonviolent means of addressing situations have been very useful, especially for women groups, as a tool for their advocacy, as opposed to resorting to violence because of exclusion. And so in this study, I was able to establish that connection, especially in terms of women's group, about how useful nonviolent potency is in terms of forging an agenda, and then also ensuring that there's this leverage that comes for persistent advocacy, to recognizing that women groups have an integral role to play as contributors to peace. And I ended also by noting that there should be more research regarding women's civil resistance, because in all the contexts that I considered, none was an authoritative context or regime. So that was actually a scope condition for my study. I emphasized the need to ensure that there would be more consideration and more research-based research actually in finding the connections between women's civil resistance in securing inclusion in peace negotiations where the terrain is not of a democratic nature, but also an authoritarian regime. It will be an interesting find. That way we can have a balanced perspective about if what obtains in democratic societies is also reflective in authoritarian regime. Thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.